after the war, there wasn't much around. We used to get 4-gallon tins of gasoline a week, and you had to run your whole business on that. People were quite poor, really, and the harder they worked, the better they did. Peasant farmers did well because farming was a way of life, and you worked and you sold your product. My father would have done the same. That's how it all got going. Only one guy working on the site. Down the other shop, he knows you're coming. Right, I'll take that one back to the other shop. They might be short. We go through 600 bottles of milk a month. That's just for morning teas. Yeah, well, I'm David Lewis Swap.
Yeah, I'm Lewis Joseph Swap.
We're probably past having any special role. We're just joint directors. I mean, there's no big deal to that. There's nothing, nobody's better than anybody else. Worked in the business all my life, been interested in it. I suppose if we owned a chocolate factory, I would have got into that, but we happened to move to it.
Probably my early memories of going to school on a little bike, and David had a horse. Mum and father still had the farm at Teapoy then that we were brought up in. I remember we had a very big microcarpa hedge along the bottom of the house, went out to the road. I suppose it was in your blood. David and I spent hours under there playing with toy trucks and loaders, and the dump truck I could sit in it and David could push me around, you know what I mean? If we weren't there, we were down at the river.
That's the Wyoming stream. There's 4 kilometres of that round our farm. So this is basically what we used to have, but it was down over the back of the farm there. In several places. We didn't just get to one place, it was in several places. So you can see the shingle in the water there. You see the shingle bar? Well, that's sort of what, like Joe used to get in there and drag that out. That's all little pebbles. As far back as I can remember, well, we just had a truck or 2 trucks, and he loaded shingle onto a truck and he carted it to town. It's all washed, you see, it's already washed in the water. So it's all ready to put straight in your concrete mixer. But see, that's what I mean, that's what it's like everywhere where we got it out on the corner, where you see the build-up of sand and shingle in the water. You know, the thing I remember most about him working was how he could fill a truck in 17 or 18 minutes with a square mouth shovel and never stop. And he'd put people on the back to level it out, young guys, and they couldn't level it out as fast as he could throw it on. It was something you're proud of, and you know, later in life you appreciate his knowledge. And you know, we were brought up as a normal family. We were all close and all had breakfast and lunch and dinner together at night in the old house there at Teapoy. My father built that shed. That was his first workshop. I lived here from when I was born until I went to boarding school, 13. That was Lewis's bedroom and this one was mine. Still the same. See that there? All that concrete's made out of the shingle out of the river. That's what they made all the concrete out of in those days.
We didn't have a lot. We still lived from week to week like everyone else did, basically. Everything that Joe earned went back into the business. We were trying to get these cattle over the bridge. They wouldn't bloody go. I remember them charging back up the road, and he raced up the road on the horse, jumped off, and turned around to try and head one off and rolled his ankle on a stone and broke his ankle. I had to finish up, put the cattle back in the paddock, and my mother had him taken to the doctor, and he was in plaster for 6 weeks. He was swearing and cursing, but you remember things like that, eh?
The first piece of machinery was the drag line, I'd say big machinery, and that led to other things, because straight away he could get bigger jobs. So he got away from the handwork and he was able to load a truck and get work for the government. He bought 2 new drag lines after the first one he bought, and then it led to drainage and doing all sorts of things.
Probably got into drainage because of the drag lines, and most of that Depoy area was good farmland, and he started doing farm drainage, opening up the swamps and letting the water go.
The civil work started actually in Matamata here. That would have been early 50s. There was a big area of land just up here to the south, and it started to develop. He got a job because he had the digger to put some pipes in the ground, so it was another extension of what you could do with a machine. You get onto contract work and you make more money. You can't just hiring something out by the hour, because you only get paid for every hour you work. Whether you go fast or slow, you still only get that much per hour. But if you get $10 a foot to put pipe in the ground, and you can do 20 pipes a day instead of 1, well, you make a lot of money. The farmland was developing, but we weren't big enough to do everything. We did a lot of farm work, but then when you got the contracting work, you couldn't do everything because it's too small a business base. You had to make a good choice where you were going to go. You couldn't go in 6 directions. You had to go in one direction, I imagine. It was only 1955 when we went to Wakatani. It was a combination of circumstances. We didn't have the base. So he got to know an engineer well, and he talked him into tendering for this job and getting it. So he left and went over there to run that himself, and he had a group of men here, and he employed a foreman. But nobody thought about the water, and that water, it was tidal. And he didn't have the knowledge. And the bit of work he had still going on around here was making no money. He got over there and he was making no money. And very quickly, you sink. I'd come home, that was the year I'd been at boarding school, and we were living in Wakatani, right in the centre of the town, and the Hopi Beach is just over the hill. He came home on a Friday night and they just hustled off into the bedroom, and we were having tea and fiddling around. There must have been some other people there, probably elders, having a drink. My mother came out, who was very forthright, and said, "We've got a major problem. We've gone broke, basically, and we might lose everything." Father's had a terrible day. I never ever saw him look so bad. But I knew it was a major disaster, because I'd never seen him like that. So it gives you a bit of a shock when you're only 13 or 14. But at the same time, 4 months before, my uncle was a builder, and he flew in the Fleet Air Arm for the whole of the war in the Navy. He'd only been back from the war 9 years, and he went broke. And of course, being a small town, I think it did rub off a bit. The name rubbed off, that Swapswood were going too good. It was a big thing. There wasn't many business people in the town then. So those things, when you think back, they were quite dramatic in those days for companies to be going broke. By the time that I was going to leave school, I decided, well, it'll be good to go and work for him. So, I just went out and worked, and that's where I got the first taste of it. Certainly was interested in what he did, but you didn't think of it as being anything different to anybody else. That was what my father did. We were out of receivership in '61. In that time, Lewis had left school.
I'd worked for Caterpillar, the Caterpillar dealer at Goffcoff and Hamer in Auckland. I had another very good friend he was a diesel mechanic. Him and I both decided to leave at the end of our 6th year. I think we'd been there at work, and came home here and started fixing old equipment. And they really didn't have a decent mechanic or anybody to help fix them, and it evolved from there.
By the time he came home from Caterpillar, we had lost a decade really, because we had no progress in that whole decade. Receivership's a bloody horrible thing. It's you lose total control of what you're doing, and you get these hard times and all, terrible things happen to people, eh? Money is the cause of a lot of evil. So we lost a lot of ground. But he was a morals person and handshakes person. And he would never have wound the company up and left somebody unpaid. He wanted everyone to get paid. So we suffered the consequences of that because everybody got paid, and it took us another 10 years to recover. Well, we borrowed some money, and we had that farm at T-Boy, and they were prepared to lend Joe some money. That squared up all the debt it was owing, and you borrowed enough to get out of it. To owe a bank £5,000 then was like money, $500,000 today. But from there on in, we hit the bottom. It was like jumping down a big cliff and starting on a new level and going forward. We just went forward again.
It went on for 5 years, and then for the next 5 years after that, even though you weren't in receivership, you're treated like you were in receivership. There was still that stigma that you'd been in receivership and you might not be able to pay anybody. Nobody would give you anything unless you had cash. And all around town here, if I wanted a nut and a bolt or a little part of one of the local dealers, I'd go around there and have to pay for it, And being in receivership and having to pay for everything everywhere you went, you learn to look after money.
We realised that the drag lines, which are rope machines, were going to go to hydraulics sooner or later, and this machine just appeared in front of us, just like that. We knew what they'd do because we'd been buying them mounted on the back of a tractor, but not a fully revolving excavator. So that was in 1969, and that was a great step forward. We were getting, I think, $4 an hour, $4.50 or something for a drag line. We have a contract as what we call a guide rate, and for that machine we went straight and started charging $14 an hour for a hydraulic digger. And it was cheaper than the drag line because it did so much work, so much faster. As you got into better equipment, we came to the point where we had an opportunity to get into a quarry. Quarries matter because you've got to have rock. There's nothing you don't use rock for. You can't build a house without rock. You can't build a road, can't build a driveway, can't build a building. Can't make anything without rock.
For the community to evolve, you need rock. You go right back to the Roman days. You go to Italy now, to Rome, and what's it built on? Rock, isn't it? It came about by a good friend of David's. He was a Chevrolet dealer here in Matamata. We knew nothing about it. He bought this farm at Totara Road and then rang David up one night and said, I've just bought a farm and it's got a quarry on it. Give me this amount of some money and you can have a half share of it. Just the sort of thing we needed. And then after 6 months we weren't making any money, we'd lost money, and Alan didn't like losing money and said, give me a few dollars and you can have the other half share. And it's just gone from there. We've just grown it ourselves. There was a hole in the ground right at the bottom of a gully, and it just looked like a hopeless task. We moved millions and millions of metres of rock, and dirt, to get to the rock. And we knew the rock would always be there, but it's a huge amount of time and money. We've millions of dollars of fuel have been burnt doing it. It was a battle for 30 years, and in the last 10 years we got on top of it, and it just turns out, at the time we never thought of it, but it's 50 k's to Hamilton, 60 k's to Tauranga, 65 k's to Rotorua. So it's in a good triangle of all those cities of the south of Auckland. The growth of this area continues, so there's more and more aggregate used every day because of the general growth that we're getting. quarry face was just over here, basically. It's sort of been our backbone for the last 40 years. It's really been slowly developing the faces. There was a huge amount of overburden. You know, we've had 1 million metres of clay slipped down on that, all over the water down there, as you'd call it. You really should spend $5 million and strip the clay off it, because you haven't got $5 million. You don't. You dig around beside it and under it and trust your luck. Sales got so busy, that's when we decided to take the bull by the horns and spend a couple of $1 million with CNR, and we got them out here and we did a big stripping program and got in front of it. And since we've been in front of it, well, we've been in front of it ever since. So it's got a huge future. It's got another 100 years life, really.
Well, that was about 1969. We've accumulated quite a lot of quarries right through till now.
All our other quarries, in most cases they've almost gone broke, and even now they struggle to survive on their own, but they're good little operations and tag on to our big operation, basically. I think the guy rang up one day and it'd be a partnership, and the two partners had had a row. Dave said, oh, they want to sell Austin's quarry, we'll go and have a look at it. It was a broken down old place, you know, again with all the gear was buggered and worn out, but it was in a new area, and it was an opportunity to look into something that you could see there was some growth there. And it's probably one of our second or third biggest operations now. I try to go to them all every week, and every one of them's got a problem, you know. We've always struggled for somewhere to put overburden, take overburden off, because we've had huge amounts of overburden on our quarries, and you're always looking at ways and means or somewhere you can put it. Some of them are such a mess it can take you 20 years to turn them around. Like Totoroa Quarry, we've battled out there for 40 years, and really only in the last 10 years have we had enough rock, and it can flow now reasonably well, but it's taken a long time to get it to that point. So you're constantly looking at ways and ideas of, you know, improving them.
Well, the stock feed, us handling it, only started about 2003.
I think they brought 2,000 tonne in the first shipment that ever came. We had a storage shed we'd built at Portside Drive, which we were renting out to Ingham's for the wheat and barley. So we had a sort of a bit of spare storage that we had somewhere to put it. And it just evolved from there, really. We built the building next door here, was the next building we built. You need the buildings. You can't sell the product. First of all, you've got to have somewhere to put that product.
This big yard at the back and all these, there's about 5 sections all the way back to that road. We were reluctant to ever take it because we didn't even know what we'd do with this land. We started in the bulk storage game, I guess, in the late 90s, 1998, 99, we built the Mount Maunganui buildings. We'd run out of land there to build buildings on, and land there was getting more expensive as we thought back then. And we had this land in Matamata that was cheap, and this was where the trucks were, so we just thought we'd build some buildings. So in around 2001 or 2, we started building the building from that far end, and we just slowly over 2 years we built it all the way down to the end building. So the building is about 280 metres long. We actually built it and we didn't even have a use for it at the time. But someone would want to store something in it eventually in bulk, and that's when we started storing the maize grain. Some years we fill the whole thing up with maize. As we empty the maize out, we utilise the storage for other products. So this is yellow dent maize. Just looks a little bit like maize on a corn cob. So most maize in the world ends up going to animal feed. When I was first involved in the business, this land and building stuff was just kind of happening before my eyes, I suppose. It was a time of rapid growth. It's been a help that we haven't been over-corporatised or corporate. That's helped make decisions quickly. Growing up, my father David and Lewis both made huge sacrifices, didn't spoil themselves. They could have lived a much more comfortable life, but they've derived a great deal of personal satisfaction out of growing the business into what it is today.
My mother was very, she wasn't a big spender. She only needed enough money to be happy, so we just invested all the money into more bits of land and more bits of land. We've got a lot of land now.
David in particular, I'm sure, loves debt. I think he actually likes having lots of debt because it means that we all have to work hard and pay it off. And I think he's in his happy place when we're buying something, getting another mortgage with another bank and knows that we're going to spend the next 30 or 40 years paying for it. I think that's his happy place.
Why have we got so many farms? Well, we farm all that land, the hills around the quarries. We'll own virtually the whole road boundaries. We'll own everything inside it in another 10 or 15 years. So we farm it because it's all good land and it's in a good area. One grandfather had a dairy farm and he still owned that till after I left school. I didn't understand it then, but as you get older you appreciate what that's all about. And we do the same now.
And his buller Fawcett.
Right, well, this is just my own place. It's DL and LJ Swap Farming Partnership, really. My wife owns the block at the back here where we live. We've got a total of about 250 acres here. We started off with a 50, 60 acre block and we've just bought bits more and more and more. We've got about 10 titles here now. It's sort of a complete farm again. But we buy the best pedigree stock in the country. The Hereford and the Angus. There's lots of breeds of things you can buy, but we just stick with what we've always enjoyed. I personally like the Hereford. My wife loves the Hereford. I've had cows quiet enough that I can they would follow me through the gate and they'd come right inside, walk inside the house. But I mean, they're just exceptional animals. But it's just a lot of fun. I mean, animals are like humans, really. They're very intelligent, eh?
Oh, he loves animals, He's very conscious on getting sick animals up and going again, and it's a real last resort to put an animal down to David. It's like putting a human down as far as he's concerned, and he's very passionate about that.
See, this will be a quiet one here. Come on, darling. Here. Come on. You know who I am. She'll have been a pet. You'll walk up to her in the paddock, but we don't. There'll be half of them like that. Yeah, she's a really quiet cow. How'd you do? It's lovely when they are quiet and easy to handle. That's what the world live on, sadly, whether you like to believe it or not. I hate the thought of them going anywhere, but unfortunately they can't all stay. You've got to have very good genetics to make it work. We've got a guy who was the head of genetics for Wrightson's. He's worked for his whole life. We now get our rams at Matawai. We've got 80 rams, and the guy we're dealing with, he's top of New Zealand. Just unbelievable sheep. You know, you just don't realise what genetics are till you go and buy them. So these are things you learn as you go along. Lewis is probably, he's 3/4 of why we're where we are today. I've had the drive and I do the thinking, and I've just tried to pay $10,000 worth of accounts every month with $5,000 because we've been broke all our lives and we're always behind the 8 ball until the last 10 years. Lewis is a very good thinker. He's developed that Toteroa quarry. He's developed all our big things. He'll go out on a Saturday and he'll sit on a rock at the top of the hill, nobody around, and he'll just look at something for 2 hours and he'll work out why it's not going right and how can we make this go better. He can build a road down a hill to a grade. No engineering, no levels, nothing. He can tell an operator, when you start at that point over there, I'll put a peg in the ground, I want to finish up there. I want one grade all the way. And, you know, he designs all our crushing plants. You know, just designed a new metal washing plant at Toteroa. And that was all designed by him. His knowledge is just enormous.
Dave, he always looked at the office side of it, and I've always been the one that's gone out and got involved with quarrying and planning the quarries and where we're going to go. We're pretty lucky. We're probably a bit different to one another, and we got on. We didn't argue and carry on with one another all day. Even today, he spends half his life helping other people. He's been like that all his life. He's always helped a lot of people outside our business, something to do with our business.
Lewis is 75% of this business. He's had a bit of ill health the last 5 years, and you know, it worries his family a lot, but I'll tell you what, I never say very much about it, but it'd be a bloody worry to me if he wasn't here, because, you know, there's none of them could fill his gap, and I couldn't do it on my own. Mind you, he's worked for 53 years and I've worked for over 60. That's a few years put together. There's a lot of mistakes and a lot of knowledge and a lot of learning and doing things wrong and doing them right to get to where you go. You can't read it out of a textbook, that's what I'm saying. None of this stuff's in a textbook. It's just using this up here. My mother and father would have been ecstatic now. My mother used to come in and out right up until the year before she couldn't drive. She'd just arrived, she'd go out to a quarry at 100 and 2 in a car with 4 old ladies just drive around dump trucks and not even bloody worry about anybody where she was. They could have gone right over the top of them. She never worried about anything. That's what she was like. You know, she was a very, very strong woman. You could go around Matamata anywhere now. Everybody knew Sadie Swamp. Everybody. And she always had time for somebody, always had time to do things. That's come back to me since my mother's died, how important she was. She drove my father, she drove all of us. This is where we started in Raumati Avenue, right here. That was our office. We came here in 1960. We moved into these offices in 1974. Seemed like a long time we were there, but it probably wasn't that long when you look back. That was the bench and he used to work behind here. How's that? Still here. But it's hard to believe the phone's on the desk and everything used to go and people came to the door. But there you are. Come in. Here was the office that I've only got one boy left and he's timid. Oh yeah, there's a few old cats there, yeah. Come on, Rod. He's as quiet as a mouse, but he's very one-man cat, that. Funnily enough, I was just talking to you before about my mother and father when they got married. That was on their honeymoon, sitting on a moon in Sydney, 1936. That's that office I just took you into. I must get these photos put away somewhere because there's a bit of history in some of these. Yeah, there's a few things have changed over the years, I can tell you. We're into the fourth generation now. They're making more decisions, have done for the last 10 years than I have or Lewis has. It's not us when I say me, it's a joint effort by the family. You know, 3 generations is about as far as they go. But our family are very, very good. They're very stable and they're all interested. We would never have probably done what we've done if the kids weren't interested. You'll never build a business as well as you will if you've got your own family in it. And that's the important thing, isn't it? That you give people a good start. But however, as long as we go, we've got the rock, which is a continuing thing, the stock feed, money going into land, it'll be sound. A big part of most businesses is your hands, manual. You can see our office. We've got no people. You know, 2 girls run that whole business really. It's amazing.
I suppose a lot of the old gear we've used over the years, it's quite good just to keep some of them rather than to cut them all up and throw them into the scrap. You know, it's like everything old. I mean, people keep old cups and old crockery and old photographs, and why not keep old machinery, you know?
Talking about the old machinery, you can pull it to bits and put it together so quickly with the modern equipment we got here now. You can get them right back to new. Well, come on over here and I'll show you the drag line. And that's the machine you'll see the photos of. That's the Smith 210. We built that right back to new. See, this looked like a mammoth machine, but when you stand beside today, it's almost only a toy. So we'll have that finished shortly. It's a shame we haven't quite got to that stage yet, but John's doing a great job of it. That'll be the only one of those in the world when that's restored. It'll go into a museum or something. It winds the clock back to where our father started, and it meant a lot to us when we were kids, even growing up, because it earned a lot of money and educated us, and you know. It's amazing men sat in those for 10 hours at a time, and today they'd laugh at you if you want someone to drive that for 10 hours. You see this truck here behind there, well, that was the biggest truck in New Zealand in 1960. But you can still get in that because we've restored it and drive it to Wellington and Invercargill and back. But so that's the story on the vintage stuff. There's 6 things that are important in my life: morals, ethics and handshakes. That is, if I owed somebody $1 million and everything went pear-shaped, I'd still pay it. But not many people do that today. And with our business, you've got to have relevant experience, you've got to have track record and resources. And the largest resource we have is people.
David and I like to know them more personally and get to know their families personally, and you don't mind quite often helping them out odd times for little things that they might need to get them over a bit of a speed bump they get into if they've been around, and you've got to look after them because good people are hard to get. People sort of think, oh, he's only a bloody truck driver, but we've got some older truck drivers that do 10 loads a day where the young guys can only do 5 loads a day, you know what I mean? And they do that every day. We couldn't evolve if we didn't have those people. They're just as important in our company as David and I are.
I'm Jeff, and I started here in 1973, working still with David and Lewis, It is totally a family business. It's not a corporate-owned company, and it certainly shows because everything's on a personal basis and works well. Whenever there's a problem, etc., that you can't deal with, one phone call and everything's always all sorted and nothing's a problem. It's just good having such a big company support you in the way that David and Lewis do.
You can buy machinery, but to get someone to operate that machine, much harder than buying the machine. Very, very hard to get people to do those jobs. You know, you put one of those big truck and trailers, 60 tonne on it, doing 90 k's down the highway all day, and there's thousands of cars you're passing with women and children and old people and young people in them. You've got to have people that are very responsible driving them.
A lot of people that have come as only young people and have worked here all their lives, and then their sons have worked here, now their grandsons are working here, and we treat them just like we treat anybody else, sort of thing, and you tend to look after them because good people are hard to get.
So I'm Michael Hawke, been with Swap since 2002.
Brandon Hawke, Michael's son, been here since about this high really, riding around with Dad.
Well, there's probably quite a long family history there. David and Lewis and my father, they worked together on jobs.
Yeah, Swaps have always supported the family environment and culture. It was never an issue for me to be with Dad when I was a kid.
David and Lewis, they built such a big empire, you know, and you've got to take your hat off to them for doing that. They probably started off with 20 people and now they've got over 500. And David and Lewis, they know exactly what's happening every day. And they're in their 80s and 70s now, and they're here before anyone else is at work, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess they lead by example. They wouldn't, wouldn't ask anyone to do something they wouldn't do themselves. Definitely a good place to be.
The thing I enjoy now is we've got a younger team of people, and when you see them coming in and you coach them, that instead of making a mistake to learn, they don't make the mistake. They go to the top so much quicker if they're being coached. It's amazing the people that come here. A guy said to me the other day, you know, he said, I can't believe it. You can come into that place of yours and you sit by some old rustic machinery, and beside you is a bloody lawyer on this side, there's a High Court judge over there, there's a doctor around here, and there's an accountant and a lawyer, and they're all sitting there with the truck drivers enjoying it. I'm very passionate about what we've done. You know, to finally put the nail in the coffin, I'll tell you, you never ever lose sight of the fact that you're going to move on, and you hope that they can all keep it together. You're not immune from making mistakes, no matter what you do. And we've still got problems. We'll never not have some problems. Every day there's a problem. And you just got to battle through them. You know, people say to me now, how do you put up with the pressure? I don't. Don't worry about the pressure. I'm way past that, I used to. But I mean, there's people like my sons and everybody all sharing that pressure. People who worry die, and people who don't worry die too. So no worrying, is there?
There's no doubt about it, they've set an enormous foundation, and the reality is they could probably be 10 times richer than they are, but they just love the business. Yeah, I think we'd all like to enjoy life probably a little more than Dave and Lewis have, but the reality is that's a silly comment because they've enjoyed life to the fullest because they're doing exactly what they love.
I mean, it's only what you put into it that'll make it work, and I think anything in life is like that.
Do you guys ever plan on retiring?
No.
Are you guys gonna go home now, or?
Yep.
Yep.
I'm not going to bloody sleep here, I'll tell you that.